by special request. 6 or 8 of the news items that seem to be, according to some reports, open to further analysis. The less you understand, the more it lends itself to systemization. Let me just read them all. City fact: repetition is sanity. Thinker's fact: repetition sucks. There is not even the appearance of any importance to any form, any aspect of human existence without seriousness. There are 2 classes of dumb people on earth. First, there are those ordinary, sane, rational, serious, decent people who say and think dumb things. Then there's a second group who are even dumber. They criticize the first group. Remember, the dead are on your trail, or vice versa. It's one or the other. All of these are connected, by the way. I don't know how they do it. They bring out new, ordinary thinking is based always on old, ordinary thinking. Cannibals dining on cannibals. Go somewhere else to eat. All right. And there was this long one here I laid aside. Let me read it in case we don't get back. The hungry want food. This, may I say in advance, has to do, I'm sure you can put forth some of the analyzation. It's almost like a running dual, parallel commentary on people, if we can again talk about people theoretically, as humans not civilized and yet with enough attributes of being human that we talk of them as example. In other words, it'd be humans just prior to when they could think and talk. Almost animals, but I know that gives some people the willies. Have you ever noticed the kind of people, by the way, that get the willies from being compared to animals? If you hadn't, just turn on a talk show or get up in a bar or at a debate contest and say, it's my opinion. Well, better yet, blame it on somebody else. I always say, I just read an important book from some philosopher, some biologist in Germany, I think it was. But anyway, he says that without any doubt now, there is genetic proof, no longer theory, that men are no more than animals that just so happen to have got a kind of palate and they can talk and then turn around and watch the kind of people, now and historically, if you want to go back and check books and find old drawings, the kind of people in churches and institutional settings, the kind of people who have raised great hackles when they hear someone say, man is no more than a beast. Oh, he quit doing it in the house. It's like he housebroke himself. He can talk and he can draw, he got a little, but he is really, other than those few things, he's no more than an animal. And then just wait and watch out of the crowd. The kind of people who suddenly, at least in their seats, they begin to rise up like, how dare you say that? Just take a look at them. I say that, I encourage you to do that on the basis that I hope that none of you turn around and you see somebody and you've got the wherewithal to suddenly think, God almighty, that man looks just like me. Here we go. So it's sort of a parallel. The hungry want food, the cold, warmth and clothing, which we're talking about that kind of animal level. The neurally crude, that is kind of the neurally immature, even long for mental sustenance. They're getting right close to talking. They're wanting to feed the mind. But those already intellectually active who want to now expand their intellectual activities and operations continually are confronted with a risk. It's never noted, but it's a risk of being like a naked person. They're trying to get more, they're trying to expand their operations, but they run the risk of being like a person naked, seeking direct, brief, functional clothing, and end up owning, and of course tied to, driven nuts, but now they own a whole chain of clothing stores. Think about it. Well, a real thinker, there was no mistake in the past because it could not have been otherwise. But think back, either when you were a child or if you could keep a certain kind of sophisticated naivete, even over the last few years, even into adulthood, for those of you who are adults and adulteresses. That your first questions, like your first hungers, seem to be rather direct, which is what this meant if it got a little too artsy, that it would be like someone who was they're suddenly naked, of course in a metaphorical sense, and they seek suitable, brief, direct, and functional clothing. Can you think back at the original hunger you had if you were more than just an ordinary person, that you had a kind of intellectual hunger that verged on being of some significance to you? Wasn't it pretty simple? Wasn't it pretty simple? Well, basically it's all the same question. You think, what in the hell are we doing here? That was the question. Then you try to ask your mother, your father, a priest, or rabbi, and then this is where this begins to make sense. I say, but at any rate, well, you be the judge. And so rather than being able to get the kind of functional clothing you sought, you go to somebody. Perhaps you shouldn't make these kind of hand gestures, especially to a rabbi that just woke up. You don't want to scare men of the cloth early in the mornings. Like on a Saturday or Sunday or Monday, whatever day was appropriate, that they might have discovered that same guy that had that real nice, young, domesticated Chardonnay. But maybe you shouldn't do that. But at any rate, you go to them with this easy question, direct question. As I said, either when you were young, if you want to take it literally, which could have happened, or if you could contain yourself, it could have happened even past the age of 12. But that you went to someone who supposedly knew after your parents had to tell you, well, hey, ask me why the sky is blue, but don't ask me this stuff. Well, why is the sky blue? And then it really gets sticky. You go there seeking what amounted to direct, functional, brief clothing. And what did you end up with? It's like you went to somebody's, let's really make it symbolic now, even past metaphor. You went and you asked a simple thing like, what's the purpose of life? And what did you end up with? You ended up, if I stretched it too much, or if the news on about owning a chain of clothing stores, what did you end up with? You end up like with 117,000 overcoats and scarves and gloves that they put on you, because, in case you didn't see the connection, here was the first one I read. The less you understand, the more it lends itself to systemization. Since I didn't seem to get, does it make any sense now? What happens? What are institutions? We've had news items similar to this before. The institutions are like a collective effort for humanity to hide their ignorance. But oftentimes the institutions are educational. That's one of the primary ones. It's probably more, other than religion, as far as what normally passes for institutions, would be those involved with some sort of educational pursuit. But what are they? It's like, let's all band together, and if we all get together, we dress up and take baths, and we'll give each other degrees. You give me one first, and I'll give you one, and they'll just get out of hand. It's like suddenly we all got on so many overcoats, galoshes. We used to call them rubbers, but I don't think you can. Times change. Galoshes, scarves, caps on top of caps, and then a hat, and then a cap. And 17 pairs of gloves. It's like every time you keep asking the simple question to somebody, what's the purpose? What's going on here? You came to the right place. If they're ordinary and sane, you got to remember they're never stuck for an answer. Doesn't mean they have to know anything, but good question, my boy, good question. What they do is they grab you to put another overcoat on you. And they keep trying to weave, as they're supposed to, these great, complex, intricate dreams. And of course, in the institution of religion, they become theological weavings. In education, they become philosophical musings. But they get more and more, I assume you get it. I didn't hear anything particular in mind, but it's like you go and you ask for, and what happens? You start off and you ask I don't blame your parents. But you ask them first, if you had a fairly decent childhood, Daddy, what's going on here? What do you mean? What's the purpose in life, and why aren't people happy, or what have you asked? And he says, son, those are bad. Those are bad in a good sense. That's a heavy question, dude. Go see our priest. Or under other circumstances, he might go say, I have a friend who teaches psychology or philosophy over at the university. I grew up with him. Go ask him. So you go and you ask somebody, and then it starts this. A few more years, and you ask somebody else. You try another priest, or if you grew up in a Catholic church, then you go try a minister. Although not minister, you go talk to a rabbi. You go try another religion. And then you go and you start investigating Buddhism. Then you do fall into, maybe become an agnostic. You go to their meeting and ask them what's going on, and then they go. And then you try philosophy, and then you try. But you remember, this is, and in a sense, if things were arranged in a certain way, it would be that, like, although this doesn't happen, well, it does happen, but it comes to no good when it happens. But it would, if it did not have a sorry result, it would be like somewhere down the road, after some number of years, a person would look what has happened. Which, by the way, in case you who flunked out of biology, that is a decent drawing of the human brain. So that somewhere sooner or later, there you are, owning this clothing chain that you didn't want, or if you like the other version, it's like they emptied 27 chapters of goodwill, their used clothing, and they made you wear them. And you can't move, and you're trying to walk around. And it suddenly strikes you, all I asked for was that one little dingy thing. I said, what's the purpose in being here? And look what they've done to me. Of course, what they've done to you has made you civilized, perhaps educated, maybe sophisticated, successful. And of course, when I said you're not supposed to ever think of that, and if people do, and I said it came to a bad end in case you didn't catch on, it is known as like cracking up in the middle of success, as people coming apart, which does happen in life, that people are suddenly, it's like they're in this condition, and they might be 50 years old and thought, as far as they're concerned, well, I haven't thought about those weird questions. And, well, you know all this. They do it in movies and all kinds of things, that suddenly a man one day goes, I've wasted my whole, what the hell's going on? The dust in the mouth of success and all those stories. But notice that makes movies and fiction, because it does touch on reality, but it is infrequent enough to make it interesting as fiction. In other words, many people could watch a movie about somebody having a middle-age crisis. Let's put it that way. Or just, not be middle-aged, but a guy that's worked real hard and reached some area of success, intellectually, financially, artistically, and then one day. Literature is full of it for the last 3,000 years, right up until today. I know they're making movies, and a man or a woman suddenly gets up one day and looks around. What the hell am I doing? What happened to me? Why didn't I ever find my dream, etc.? It's this. And if it goes too far, suddenly, they become, like silly putty, and they have to put them away, or they take up with drugs. Their whole life falls apart, is what I meant. With an ordinary person, this happened, it is an anomaly, and it comes to no good. But that is the basis of it. That was the basis of this news item. It's like you start off asking one person, like, could I have a beanie? Could I have a pocket handkerchief? And since nobody could give you a pocket handkerchief, they said, wait a minute. No, here's what you need. And they gave you an overcoat. And you went, well? And they said, well, now, if you don't like that, I've got a friend. Go see him. So you go to see him for a handkerchief. It's the same thing I'm describing. And they end up, and he said, wait a minute. What you need, is a big, long scarf, a real good woolly one. Then you keep looking, a handkerchief. And then they start giving you boots. And it just keeps on and on until it ends up like this. Is it supposed to? And in one sense, although that's not in any sense, in any way a critique of life, but in a sense, surely you understand it by now, it's to help obscure this. Because to an ordinary man, there is no little dot. There is no pocket handkerchief. There is no answer you can tell an ordinary man. If there is a secret that the great conspiracies the great conspiracies are hiding and know about, if it is and they told an ordinary man, it would come to the same kind of sorry end. If it could be something that you could just tell a man, an ordinary man would not go, wow, thank you so much. He'd bounce off the wall, if there was such a thing, and he could hear it. So, it is not that there is anything wrong with life, but in a sense, it is to help. It is to filigree your brain in such a way that it's already virgin, it's already like a forest. You got to start doing this. You got to either start cutting it down or stringing it with vines. All right, those of you that like John Locke as opposed to Paul Bunyan, the Forestry Trails, it's a blank, it's like a slate, and the whole world's got a write on it. And of course, ordinary people say, well, that's wonderful because you need education. We're born dumb, stupid, uneducated, so we need it. True. I'll say that in case there's any ordinary people listening. True. But the main thing is to fill it up with something. Yes, but good stuff. Right, yeah. Well, we don't go and have a bad education. Oh, no. No. What if you went to a university? What if you went to the wrong university and studied psychology and they gave you a degree and you found out, boy, they taught me the wrong kind of psychology. And you went to study physics. And instead of going to Cambridge, you went to, some cheap, Princeton. And you got through and you spent 8 or 10 years, got your doctorate degree and found out they taught me some kind of phony physics. Oh, yeah, you got to watch that. I was afraid I overdid that. I know all that sounds impossible, but it's not. It's the same thing of people going, well, I started off studying to be a priest, and now I found I'm so damn horny I can't be a priest. It's like they taught me the wrong religion. It's the same thing. It just seems like, well, science is different. See, that's the humor. It's all got to be filled up. But an ordinary man say, well, yeah, filled up, but filled up with the right thing. There's no right thing. Oh, yes, there is. I'm sorry, I forgot it was ordinary. You're right, there is. Watch it. You've got to be careful about what you learn. Think about it. Now, of course, there are limits. If you taught somebody something absolutely insane and they would put up with it, then they are going to be nuts too. We're not talking about the anomalies again of life or the exceptions, but ordinary people, as they must believe that, all right, if our mind is a blank, if we're talking now above the limbic system of the brain, of the spinal cord, and we're talking about the intellectual life of man, then what is filled in here, what we learn, it is not just quantity, it is quality. We've got to learn the right thing, and that's true as far as that goes to them. But once you learn how to think, all as important as that. Well, no, some of that, it's got to be the right kind of curlicues and filigrees and, right, sure. They've got to believe that. And, of course, it is true at that level. Well, all right, if you're going to be ordinary and operate, you cannot go out and study physics. Let's put it this way, you cannot go study it from some crackpot cult that believes the world is flat and that for every action there are 14 opposite and equal reactions, and then you have to go deal with that somewhere. You understand you can't do that. So me making the joke that it's unimportant, it is not unimportant. At the ordinary level, it is important. But as far as understanding what's going on, there being some significance over your moral education or what you believe about human relationships, what you believe about social mores, everything that you operate from up here at the ordinary level, what is the difference between, for instance, being a Catholic, being a Jew, being a Republican, being a royalist, being a Democrat, being a socialist? Of course, ordinary people say, well, hell, there's a lot of difference. But see, you people know better. Now, if you're ordinary, there's a difference. If you're an ordinary person, that sort of institutional identification or racial identification or nationalistic is about all you got. Man has to stand up and say, wait a minute, I'm going to have to take exception to all of this. I personally, no offense to other people, but I personally am Catholic. My whole family's been Catholic. My whole family's, in fact, always been Irish. And I find it to be of some significance. This is no offense to other religions or other nationalities, but that's what I am by God, and I can't change it, and I feel some closeness to my background, to the rituals we observe. I know. Because ordinarily, a person like that, if they did not have that, what would they be? They would be back to that, looking to fill in that one spot. They would almost be a non-entity. That's all they are. They got to say what they are to know what they are. There's nothing else up there. But once you realize that, then you understand at a completely different level that's beyond any sort of ordinary analyzation, that as far as it being important whether you're a Catholic or a Jew, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, matters not. Not if you're a thinker. It's just, hey, I was born fat. I was born lame. I was born with 2 eyes, 3 ears. Well, tell me something new. But see, intellectually, ordinary people must believe that the rest of this is on another level. The rest of this is discrete. It is separate. That it's true, a man may be born deformed. Sad to say, but that is not the same thing as being a Catholic. Of course, to them it's not, and at that level it's not. But, sad to say and happy to say, it is. The less you understand, the more it lends itself to systemization. May I point out, this is not, again, we've done enough, or some in the past, institutionally. Ignorance must be put into a systematic form to become institutionalized. Uncertainty must become organized, must become institutionalized to turn into civilization. The health of the human mind, the human intellect ordinarily, is not on the ability to find answers to questions, it's on the ability to continue to ask new questions. That's what keeps it alive. And once you understand that, once you see it, then any comment about ignorance personified are institutions. It's not an attack, it is the nature of it. Or back up again, everybody understood this at one time, institutions, civilization itself, but institutions cannot succeed at their own professed goals. Take their word for it. Whatever they say is their goal, they cannot succeed. Because if they did, they would be self-defeating. They would be out of business. If peniology actually reformed convicts, reformed unsocial people, they'd be out of business. If the churches, if religion actually did whatever they claim is, if psychoanalysis did what it claims, it would put itself out of business shortly, in a generation. They cannot succeed. That's not the point. And only dumb people criticize them. Of course, there are actually three classes of dumbness, if you want. That New Zion Knight said there are two classes. Those who say and think dumb things from an objective view, such as, let's say, a psychologist, psychiatrist, that they say and do exceedingly dumb things. But there are people even dumber. Those who criticize it. But now we're talking, there's actually a third. I don't know whether we should make them sequential, but there's a third, sort of a side group. I'm making that too hard. There's a third level. It's the first group then defending themselves. Of course, now I'm going to do that. There's a fourth level. Then it's the second group going, ha ha, I knew it. But do you hear what I'm describing? I'm describing the exemplary reality of a self-fueling machine. I just called it dumb. But somebody gets up and says something dumb. Yes, I speak for God. God told me to give, he said to tell you, give me half of everything you own, and when you die, you'll get it all back at 25% interest. Tax-free. You said, God, is that dumb? What kind of idiots still believe that kind of crap? What's religion is going to... See, there's the example. The first group, let's say, was dumb. The first guy that said that. That's nothing. There's always somebody immediately dumber. Always. And that's somebody that's going to go, that's trying to piss inside the tent. No, hey, no. I can't. You can't make me believe it. You idiot. What kind of idiot, think about what kind of dumb person would take time out of their busy intellectual life to stop and attack religion? That's like to save up all of your intellectual ammunition to buy an M1 tank because you saw an ant you didn't like down the street. To criticize religion. Boy, we're talking about just overheated, first-class, heavy-duty intellectualism on the hoof, right? Well, there. So at any rate, since I went to that, you could say that the first group of dumb people, ordinary dumb people, are those, the sane, remember, point out, sane, reasonable, they run the world. But they say and do dumb things. That is, there is no objective basis. It cannot be proven one way or the other. It is partisan thinking, as it has to be. It's electricity, apparently walking on one leg, which is an illusion. But the first group says and does dumb things. But the second group, even dumber. They criticize the first group. Ha ha, boy, we caught you being dumb. And of course they take it as, huh? Are we something? But now that I started, I wanted you to see, then there's a third level. That is, back to the first group. that get accused by the second group, who is dumber, of going, that's dumb. Then the first group goes, wait a minute there. In other words, defend themselves. That's the third level of dumbness. Then there's a fourth level of dumbness, and that's the second group, the ones that accuse the first group of being dumb. That's the fourth group. After the first group defends themselves, is the second group for the fourth level going, punching each other like, ha ha, we knew it. Only those stepped on squeal, ha ha, we got you. All of that is sort of irrelevant, except for the point that, notice, that's not some form or some observation of the insanity of humanity. That is a machine. That is cannibals feasting upon cannibals. It is a self-fueling machine, that which Newton said was impossible. But notice, he died. That's how much he knew. Not only died, but went to school in a foreign country. And I can't help it that he was born there. If he'd had any sense, he'd have moved and gone to Auburn or the University of Alabama anyway. They had ships sailing to America then. He could have gotten over here. Other than institutional, what I was trying to get at was this New Zyme that said, the less you understand, the more it lends itself to systemization. Now consider, even inside of a man's own mind, if this was possible for him to be almost non-influenced by his surroundings, although he's not, but the way it appears to be to talk about it, that if a man himself was trying to be a more independent thinker, an ordinary man, they normally end up being smart-ass critics, social commentators, reporters, newscasters, sometimes actors, sometimes politicians. Sometimes they come to their senses and just become drunks and disappear. But what I was trying to get you to see is this is true on two different levels at least. That the less you understand, the more it lends itself to systemization. For a church, for a political party, well, there's two great ones. For somebody come up with a whole new idea, a neo-Marxist, a new guy that considers that he is Marx or just revisited, reborn. He's got to come up with a new political theory about how the state should work. And of course, all this has to do with one thing. It's always somebody wanting to dance forward and to get a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of intellectual, wimpy people that will put up with being led on the dance floor. So it could be politics, it could be religion, it could be the social sciences. A guy comes up with a new idea. The new idea means nothing. So what do you have to do? I mean, it may start off with just a little spark somewhere, and I don't know what to make up that they hadn't already made up. I know they're making it up right now, but we should take not only from the rich and give to the poor, but all of us should start a new party called the Gimme Party. And we should take from everybody. We won't discriminate from the rich and poor and give it to us. Whatever the idea is not, it has no value, it's got no meaning, it's got no clinical, objective, nonpartisan significance. It could be religion, of course, a new idea of religion, that God is actually, literally, the planet, the star, our sun. That it's actually Him. Whatever it is, it's got no validity, so what must you do if it's going to get anywhere? You must turn it into some organized, systematic form of belief, some theory, a school of thought, a school of art, a new science. Of course, I know it'll start off, if the more it seems to be in the area of science as opposed to the arts or religion, they will have to call it a theory. But the point is, you can't just say the idea. You just can't say, all right, we start off and we're all a little circle, and after that, everybody tries to fill us up with overcoats and draw on us, and it doesn't mean anything. That's not going anywhere. You can't just say, life is a joke. Now, you might get some people stop for a minute and they go, well, because they're waiting, well, and you say, yes, we are starting a whole new religion, we're starting a whole new cult of some kind, a new social movement based on the fact, without any doubt, that life is a joke, and you'll find people show up. Of course, you could say, life is an oak tree, and some people would show up. But they're not going to stay that long. They're waiting for it. Well, and it's not just because I tried to make two, fairly silly ones, or say life's an oak tree. You can say, well, nobody's going for that. Well, people go for, when you die, you go somewhere that nobody can see. They go for that. So, at any rate, whatever the idea is, whatever the one idea is, if it's real short, like, life is a joke, or life is a test. I don't mean it just to be silly, but if you just said life is a test, many people would go, aha. But they'll only say aha and give you some attention for a few minutes, a few hours. The ideal will not do it. It must become a system. It must become, as they say in the law, codified. You must kind of pull it all together. It really needs to have eventually rituals, although I know in science and the arts sometimes they don't want to call it ritual since religion has used it, but it becomes ritualistic. It must have forms of behavior. It must have rules of conduct. It must have its own rituals. But above all, intellectually, the more it is aimed to that, which it is to some degree anyway, but the more it's aimed at that, the more it must be systematized. It must get written down. It must begin to have chapters and verses. It must have some sort of outline. It must say, all right, we all start in such and such position. Then we must work our way up. We must improve ourselves in this manner. We do it by these kind of rituals. We do it through this kind of study. We do it by reading these kind of books. It must be systematized. Because if there was one great little secret right now that would be good for everybody, that life is a test. Let me just say that. Many people, if they heard that and thought, that is brand new, that strikes something in me, that strikes me as being real, God, tell me more. Think about it. If it's so great, what do you mean, tell me more? If that was it, what else? I was going to take a side trip, and I noticed I went off alone. I didn't do the theatrics enough. A man comes out and says to a group, life is a test. And people swoon, they faint, they stagger. My God, all my life I've been reading and studying, and here it is. In 4 words, I suddenly heard the truth, the reality. Life is a test. My God. And they finally pull themselves together and quit hyperventilating, and they go, all right, tell me the rest. Think about it. If that was it, what the hell? What do you mean the rest? You just got through going, oh, how wonderful. Oh, this is it. What do you mean the rest? If that was it, what else do you want? It won't do. See, because even if it was, which it can't be, is why I was trying to get you to see, because even I start off saying, what if it was? You understand that it can be both ways. What if it was, but it can't be? Because ordinary people, they go, that's it. There's no doubt. I'll kill anybody that tells me that. Show them to me. Boy, I'm glad I met you. Life is a test. I see that. It strikes me in my little heart, in my soul, in my everywhere. I see it. All right, when do we get the rest? See, so even if it was it, you do understand, it can't be it. After that, very shortly, it must become the stages. And you can drag it out for years, thousands of years, as witnessed by things going on around you today. It must become systematized. And what I was, again, trying to get back away from just the institutional level, which it's got to be, but internally, your mind, due to the laws of physics, forgive me, Newton, I didn't mean to pick on him, not at our expense, but the laws of physics are such, the laws of goo and lightning. The chemical and electrical processes within the human brain are in such a way that ignorance, uncertainty, that which you do not know, must become systematized. And you become you. Your mind begins to operate. You have this. But from one view you can go, yeah, I've got that, but I still don't know what I wanted to know. Well, picky. Not satisfied with being ordinary, eh? The less you understand, the more it lends itself to systemization. Since we've gone this far, I can up the stakes a little bit in case you hadn't already done it. The less you understand, the more it must be. We just kind of being, that was the first news item, or one of the first tonight, that lends itself. Gag me with a rat. Lends itself. It must be. All right. Face this. You can face this. At the ordinary level, what you originally wanted to know about the secrets of life, you don't know. Not at that level. Nobody you ever met knew. All right? So you got that. But what if you just stop there? Now you would be, whatever you are, you'd be a 30, 40, 50-year-old, little, somebody sitting there, at least intellectually, still sitting there in diapers. Right? You can't live out another 40 or 50 years as a stupid little kid. No, you have to pull yourself up, face up to reality, take all your ignorance, and put it in some kind of systemized form. Get a degree. That always helps. I don't have to know anything. I have a degree. That's part of the point. I graduated from that school. I don't have to know anything. What do you mean? I'm a priest. I don't have to know anything about what's going on. I'm a doctor of such and such. What I want you to see is, not just out there, but internally. It literally is so. The less you understand, the more you must systematize it. That is sanity. It is repetition. It is stability. It's not knowing anything, but it's systematizing. It's kind of taking all of your ignorance, all of your uncertainty, and it's like you finally, like getting papers or something, kind of all spread out and untidy. You don't know this, you don't know that. You used to worry about this. Nobody knew. And it's finally you have to kind of go, you realize, hell, here I am. I'm 20. She's pregnant again. I guess I'm going to go ahead and marry her, or at least move in. I got to get a job. And she wants to start going back to church for the nipper's sake. All right, I'll go. She tells me I should quit drinking so much and quit trying to screw her sister. Well, all right. And so it's kind of like you think, well, all right, that's it. Here's all the stuff you didn't know, all the stuff that you had, that originally you wanted to know, all the stuff you're uncertain of. Like, how did I end up here? What am I doing here? Why did I end up with her? No offense to her personally. I didn't want to live with her. What am I doing with children? I didn't want any children. What am I doing in this job? 2 years ago, I didn't know what this job was, and now I'm suddenly doing it. How did I end up here? You can't do that. You have to go. You take all of that which you do not understand in the fullest sense, and you have to systematize it. You have to get it all straightened out and maybe put a gym clip on it. It's like, finally, or a rubber band. It's like, getting your mind like, well, all right, this is it. I'm 20. I got, 40 or 45 more years. I might as well face up to it. It's either that or go nuts. So you go. One other little aspect. One reason I believe, or I'm going to analyze it this way, that these kind of news items are brought up. Contraire, vis-a-vis, do-si-do, contrasted to this, is the fact that if you did want to know something, and the information was floating around somewhere, that somebody mentioned it, or it just came out of life's mouth through somebody, and it's not systematized, it's going to be very hard to hear it. Very hard, or difficult to hear it. In case lend itself didn't gag you with a rat before, rather difficult to hear, it's almost impossible. Because you would immediately almost fall into that same sort of thing that I'll assume that some of your laughter was a burgeoning reflection of understanding that somebody says something that struck you as being, by God, there it is. That's almost the truth, like the one I made up of, life is a test. And you go, oh, now we're getting somewhere. But if you don't watch it, because it's the way things are wired up in the human nervous system, it's the way what things are wired up on this planet, due to the laws of physics, you go, and whenever you get over that of, oh, God, I'm getting somewhere. And don't just blame it on whoever said it now. It's in here. Then you go, all right, what's the rest? See, if there doesn't seem to be a systemized form of it, it's almost impossible to ever hear anything. You can hear it just kind of in glancing. It's like you're walking down the street and somebody fired a rifle. You know what a ricochet is. It doesn't really hit you bad enough to hurt you, but it's like it bounced off several brick walls, and a .22, which wouldn't have done much damage anyway, kind of grazes you. And you go, oh. It's like hearing life is a test. Life is a joke. And it's like, oh, it gets your attention, and there's no follow-up. There's no system. Nobody comes to knock on your door. Two guys riding bicycles with black suits on and go, hi, we have some tracks here that we'd like for you to study. When there's no follow-up. And one more time, don't just blame it out here. Don't just look out the institution or the people that seem to have had the information where I heard that life's a joke, they didn't come and try to recruit me. Don't just wing it out there, or don't just look out there. It's in here. The ordinary mind, it can be hit by a ricochet. It can be hit by something that strikes it as being, now I'm getting somewhere. And it doesn't have to be anybody. You can do it to yourself. Third chance to gag with a rat now. If you're ever going to get anywhere, you got to do it with yourself. Just sometimes it strikes you, you're just standing there and you're thinking, or you're hearing something, and suddenly you think in a way that's absolutely non-partisan. You think in a way that, just almost makes your brain sweat with joy. Like, what in the hell? And I'm not going to put words on it, but all of you know it by now. It's what other people dream of as being a great mystical experience to work 50 years for and swoon and pass out. That you suddenly have an absolute original thought, whatever that is. It is non-partisan. It's got nothing to do with anything. And only the person thinking it has any idea what the hell they're doing. So, for me to try to explain it is to blasphemy, to engage in blasphemy in a real sense. But anyway, you can have your own thought, about something, whatever, But if you don't watch it, and you've all been through it, you will try your damnedest. The human nervous system will come back and want to make a damn religion out of it. And I use religion now in the sense, we'll try and systematize it, try and codify it. Well, wait a minute. It will go, oh, God, what an idea. But it's like it hit you and it's gone. But it was so great, you thought, no, I can't let it go. I can't. And you want to go, oh, wait, I'll write it down. Wait a minute. I'll make an outline of what it means. What would be the further ramifications? Oh, what if it's connected with so-and-so? Wait a minute, I'll write an allegorical novel about this idea. You have started your own religion. Not only that, you have started your own religion, and you were your first recruit. But what you got to remember is, you didn't know shit about religion. And now you've recruited yourself. So don't look out there and blame religion or philosophy. They're not dumb. No dumbness I just described. That you recruited yourself. And if you got any sense, you know how dumb you are. You didn't know crap. And now you had one thought, you made it systematized, and suddenly you have recruited yourself. It's like, come here, my child, I'll help. And you're dancing with yourself. And you knew you couldn't dance. You're listening to yourself. You have joined up your cult. And you know that you're an idiot, a maniac. Worse, you didn't know anything. Yeah, but I had that one thought, and it blossomed. There's a blossom. There it is.